Welcome back. As you know that the course is Morphology and Syntax, and we are going to discuss the third lecture, which is based on phrases and its types. So we are going to start. In today's lesson, we will learn about the phrases and the 7 common types of phrases. As you know previously that a phrase is a group of connected words, and unlike a clause, a phrase doesn't contain a subject or predicate. Phrases can function in the sentence like nouns, adverbs, and adjectives. For example, if you see the examples here, the first one is after the meal, it's a prepositional phrase. The second one is the nice neighbor, it's a noun phrase. And we see the third example in this regard, we're waiting for the movie. So this is the verb phrase. All right. So there are 7 common types of phrases. These are the nouns, gerunds, infinitives, appositives, participial, prepositional, and absolute. So these are major, or you can say the common 7 types of phrases. We will discuss with examples one by one. So here we start with the noun phrase. Staying on the topic, let's start with the noun phrase. A phrase used as a noun is called a noun phrase. A noun is person, place, or thing, and what you add a modifier, you have a noun phrase, or noun phrase can be a part of the subject, the object, or a prepositional object. Let's look at these examples, and one of them is, first one is, the fathers of waters is the Mississippi rivers. In this example, the subject, the father of waters, is used as a noun since it names something and can be replaced with the noun, with pronoun. So let's try. It is the Mississippi River. In this example, the noun phrase is the subject of the sentence. Let's look at another example of a noun phrase. For example, my neighbor down the street baked me a pie. If we can replace my neighbor down the street with the pronoun she or he, or any other nouns, for example Carl or Kathy, we have a noun phrase. Let's look at another noun phrase. Jasmine baked a chocolate cake. In this example, a chocolate cake is the object of the verb baked, and it is also a noun phrase. Moro replaced the worn out furniture. In this noun phrase, the worn out furniture is the object of the verb replaced. Let's look at this another example. Mickey married the girl with blue eyes. In this example, the girl with blue eyes is the object. and it also has a preposition with blue eyes. So I think that you have got the better idea about the noun phrases. So we will move towards now the verb phrase. Now let's go on to the verb phrase or the verbals. A verb phrase is a group of words that is used as a verb. A verb phrase contains both the verb and either a direct or indirect object, also known as the verbs. Dependent verb phrases may include the verb plus the complements, the objects, or the adverb. And verb phrases such as he is running towards the bus comprised of the verb running and the complement. Towards the bus. He is running quickly toward the bus. In this example, this verb phrase is interrupted by an adverb quickly. The second example, he is running quickly towards the bus. So quickly as an adverb has been added. And one more example, if we see, he is running quickly towards the bus that is heading southbound. So that is actually, we can say that there is some extended version of verb or verbals or verb phrase. There are three types of verbals: participial, gerund, and infinitives. So turn by turn we will discuss all these three types with examples. Let's look at the gerund. A gerund is a verb form that functions as a noun. A gerund is easy to spot because it is a verb ending in ing. Gerund can be subjects, objects, or subject complements and sentences. One good trick to test any noun or part of speech functioning as a noun is that we should be able to replace it with a pronoun. So let's take this example. Skiing is my favorite sport. In this example, skiing is a gerund. Let's replace it with pronoun it. So, it is my favorite sport. So this is all about the gerund. It is a verb form that functions as a noun. That is very much clear with the given example. And now we will move forward. And here the participial are. So let's look at the participial phrases. A participial is a phrase that looks like a verb but actually functions as an adjective. It modifies a noun in the same sentence. Wagging your tail, my puppy greets me at the door. In this example, wagging a tail is the participial phrase describing my puppy sitting in the junk drawer. My glasses were pushed towards the back. In this example, sitting in the junk drawer describes my glasses. Be careful not to confuse the participial phrases for the gerund phrase. And remember that the gerund can always be substituted with the pronoun it. Like in this example, wagging her tail in my puppy's way of showing affection. In this example, if we substitute wagging her tail with the pronoun it, we can tell that this phrase is a gerund. It's my puppy's way of showing affection. So in this slide again, the example is given to differentiate between participle and gerund. Participle example is wagging her tail, my puppy greets me at the door, and gerund example is wagging her tail is my puppy's way of showing affection. Let's go on to the appositive phrase. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that gives another name to the noun right next to it. An appositive phrase usually follows the word it explains or identifies, as in this example, my puppy, a Maltese and Havanese mix, is gentle and smart. The phrase a Maltese and Havanese mix is an appositive describing my puppy. So let's go on the prepositional phrase. The prepositional phrase is a modifying phrase consisting of a preposition and its object. They act as adjectives and stand in as adverbs. For example, Josie is inside the store. Inside the store is a prepositional phrase, which in this instance is acting as a verb complement. To the verb is, let's look at another example. Josie is the girl with blue eyes, and in this example the prepositional phrase with the blue eyes is functioning as an adjective. And one more example, I will give you a call in the morning. In the morning is a prepositional phrase acting as an adverb. The last phrase, and that would be the absolute phrase. An absolute phrase is a phrase that modifies the independent clause but is not connected to the sentence by a conjunction. It's set off with a comma only, and it could be removed from the sentence without changing the meaning of the sentence. For example, his feet sore. He continued his hike. We could remove his feet sore and we would still have a complete sentence because he continued his hike is an independent clause. His feet sore, therefore, is the absolute phrase. Let's look at another example of an absolute phrase. The baby ate the applesauce with pleasure, cooing and gurglings. As she took each spoonful, in this example, the absolute phrase could be removed, cooing and gurgling. As she took each spoonful, and the independent clause would be left intact to form a complete sentence. The baby ate the applesauce with pleasure. So these were all 7 types of phrases. To summarize, a phrase is a group of connected words that do not contain a subject and a predicate. In other words, a phrase does not have a noun and a verb. Remember that groups of words that contain a subject and a predicate are clauses. Moreover, the phrases can function in the sentence like nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. And the most common types of phrases are noun phrases, the gerunds, the appositives, the participles, the prepositional phrases, and the absolute phrases. Now we need to learn about phrases and clauses, especially phrases versus clauses. What are the differences between phrases and clauses? It's very commonly asked question, so we will try to understand through example what they exactly are and what's the difference between them. So let's get started. In this slide, in the second group of words, we can identify a subject-verb unit, while in the first we can't. To find the subject-verb unit in sentences, we need to follow these two steps. First, find the verb by applying the time test. Change the time or tense of the sentence. The word you change is a verb. In number 2 example, we can change the bus goes to Eastmont Mall. The bus went to Eastmont Mall yesterday, or the bus will go to Eastmont Mall tomorrow. When we change the time, we have to change goes to when or to will go. So to go is the verb. Secondly, to find the subject, ask who or what does the action of the verb. What goes? The answer is the bus. So the bus is the subject of the verb. Alternatively, one can ask what is the first noun in the sentence. And that's almost always going to be the subject of the sentence. So by definition, a clause is a group of words with a subject-verb unit. The second group of words contain the subject-verb unit. The bus goes, so it's a clause. Moreover, as we have seen in previous slides, that phrase is a group of words without a subject-verb unit. If we try to change the time or tense of the first group of words, we can't because it contains no word that changes to show time and tense. It has no verb. So it can't have a subject-verb unit. It's a phrase. So this is the basic difference between phrase and clause, that clause is having the subject-verb unit, whereas phrase is missing this unit. So, in order to punctuate sentences correctly and avoid fragments, we need to know this basic difference of these two kinds of word groups. Okay. So how to find a phrase versus a clause? So consider the examples below. is it true that the bus to Eastmont Mall? And the second one, is it true that the bus goes to Eastmont Mall? So to find out if a group of words is a complete sentence, you can use this trick. Add is it true that before the words. If the question doesn't make sense, the group of words is a sentence fragment. If the question does make sense, the group of words is a complete sentence. Consider the examples here. Again, listen carefully. Is it true that the bus to Eastmont? And the second one, is it true that the bus goes to Eastmont Mall? The first question above does not make sense. It does have a subject, the bus, but it doesn't have a verb and it's not a complete idea. It is a phrase and hence a sentence fragment. However, the second question does make sense. It has a subject and a verb and is a complete idea. Therefore, the bus goes to Eastmont Mall is clause and it is also a complete sentence. So these are practice exercise for you. Some fragment of sentences and you can say the clauses or you can find out the phrases out of them. So please write down on your notebooks, make a clear distinction between phrases and clauses so that you can find out the proper idea behind these two terms. First example is a melodic new single. Is it a phrase or a clause? He released a melodic new single. Perhaps this sounds to be a clause, whereas the above mentioned fragment sounds a phrase. Likewise, the other sentences are given. You need to write down under the head of phrases or clauses. The third example is some rappers have no sense of melody at all. The next example, rappers with no sense of melody at all. Next example, the last single from Lil Wayne. And the next example, or you can say the practice exercise, the last single from Lil Wayne failed commercially. Then a one-man corporation. Then Lil Wayne is a one-man corporation. The next sentence, he was in a coma for 6 frightening days in 2013. Carter gave a thumbs up to TMS cameras. Second last, he sounds terminally bored. And the last one, on the last release. So you need to find out whether these sentences are phrases or clauses. Alright, our goal here is to fix fragments, run-ons and separating the commas, and to fix all these. we have to know the difference between a phrase and a clause. Here are two kinds of phrases that sometimes look like clauses. Firstly, ing phrases. When you look for verbs in sentences, remember that the ing form of a verb cannot be a verb all by itself. So the group of words. For example, succeeding in school despite working full-time is a phrase, not a clause. To make this phrase into a clause, we need to complete the verb by adding a form of the verb be. The student was succeeding in school despite working full-time. So we can make sure that an ing word is part of a main verb by checking to see if the ing word follows a form of the verb to be. For example, am, is, are, was, were, will be, has been, have been, had been, will have been, these kind of words. Another example is David is working as a security guard. David was working as a security guard last year, and David has been working as a security guard for 3 years. Another kind of phrase is also found in English language. It's obvious that happy people is a phrase, but so in people who are happy is a special kind of phrase. Follows the pattern of having noun plus who. For example, people who are happy. Another example is noun plus which, like habits which annoy me. Another example, that dog that lives next door means noun plus that. Even though these structures contain a verb, they are still considered phrases because the noun before the who, which or that doesn't have its own verb. So these phrases modify nouns in sentences. For example, people who are happy often have creative hobbies. My brother has many habits which annoy me. The dog that lives next door is friendly to everyone. So these phrases set off by words like who, which or that, called relative pronouns, do not count as clauses. So these words and these type of sentences, they do not count as clauses. Here another practice exercise is given. You need to classify these kind of different phrases. Two type of different kind of phrases we have studied, in which ing phrases and the who, that, which and these kind of phrases. So I am reading the examples or the sentences of exercise in front of you. you again need to differentiate these phrases. The first exercise sentence is, he stayed up all night thinking about to make $1 million. So you need to differentiate whether it's a special kind of phrase or a clause. The second one, cell phone screens are getting bigger. The third one is, my girlfriend loves me. The next, the girl who loves me. The next sentence, bone crunching and neck snapping. A taste that I share with many others. The desk near the window. He has a favorite place to study. The desk near the window. The second last, this was, and the last one is, she was waiting by the cafe. So you have 2 to 3 minutes to solve this exercise. Here are some other examples in order to find out special kind of phrases and clauses. Likewise, the previous slide. The first one is, her friend standing in the corner. The book that I bought yesterday. Cruising down Telegraph Ave on his bike. He got a flat tire. Cruising down Telegraph Ave on his bike, he got a flat tire. Her hair blowing in the wind. She ran to catch the bus before it left. Her hair blowing in the wind. A world in which no one trusts anyone else. So we need to understand after phrases, the concept of phrases that, and we have discussed about the clauses as well. Now we need to understand the kinds of clauses. So what a clause is, but there are 2 kinds of clauses we need to know about. Dependent and independent. To see the difference between the 2 kinds, read the following examples. Mary broke my cell phone. It's an independent clause. Second, because Mary broke my cell phone, it's a dependent clause. The second clause has a subject and a verb, Mary broke, but it can't stand on its own. It depends on another clause to give it meaning. It's easy to hear dependent clauses if you read them out loud. After an independent clause, you will feel relaxed, like an idea is complete. But after a dependent clause, you will still be waiting. You will have unanswered questions. What happened because Mary broke the cell phone? The idea is not complete. This is why it's dependent. If you still have question after hearing a group of words, chances are you are dealing with a dependent clause or a phrase. More specifically, the clause is dependent because of the word because. Words like because are called subordinators. When we use a subordinator at the beginning of a clause, the clause becomes dependent or subordinate clause and can no longer stand alone as a sentence. Dependent clauses should always be attached to independent clauses. For example, Mary broke my cell phone. I had to get another phone. So we can say that dependent clause plus independent clause is equal to a sentence. So here some common subordinators are given. These are also called subordinating conjunctions. For example, after, although, as if, as long as much as soon as though, because, before, even if, even though, how, if, in as much as, in order that, lest, now that, provided, since, so that, then, that, though, till, unless, until, when, whenever, where, wherever, while. So these are some subordinators. Now in these slides, some practice exercises also. What you need to do is to differentiate between independent and dependent clauses. So staying here, you need to identify the following as independent or dependent clauses. First sentence, since I went back to school. The next one is, I was excited for you to join me. And the next one is, although I am between paychecks, I made you a promise because I believe in you. And second last is, before the semester began. And the last one is, while we were riding bikes. So you need to identify the sentences in order to define independent or dependent clauses. And the next slide, these are another examples or practice in this regard. Okay, the next is, my roommate intends to finish college. And the next, after we circled Lake Merritt twice. Third is, as soon as you can pay me back. And the next one is, since I value your friendship. And the next is, many people hate to write. And the second last is, unless you stop doing that right now. And the last one point is, even though I have a couple more semesters. So you also need to identify the independent and dependent clauses among these sentences as well. So I hope that you got the clear idea about phrases, clauses, types of phrases and types of clauses. So here the more references are given for your further reading. Okay, good luck. See you in next class.